In 1974, this was the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a $350 million state-of-the-art vessel that was supposedly built to mine the deep ocean floor. But it was all a lie. Its real mission was top secret. It was built to steal this.
This is the wreck of the Soviet submarine K-129. In March 1968, it vanished without a trace in the Pacific Ocean. On board were 98 crewmen, all now in tune with their boat's nuclear secrets. While the CIA wanted the submarine's technology, a different question lingered. What would they do with the men they found inside? The sudden disappearance of a Gulf-class ballistic missile submarine was a grave crisis for the Soviet Union. The Kremlin immediately initiated a massive search and rescue operation, the largest in the history of the Soviet Navy. Dozens of ships and aircraft were dispatched from the naval base at Petropavlovsk, converging on the submarine's last known patrol area. For 2 months, they scoured a vast expanse of the North Pacific, a desperate, sprawling effort against the unforgiving sea. There was nothing. No oil slick, debris field, sign of the boat nor its crew. To Moscow, the K-129 was gone, swallowed by the abyss. The United States, however, was not searching. It was listening. A highly classified network of underwater hydrophones, part of the U.S. Air Force Technical Applications Center, had been monitoring the deep ocean for the acoustic signature of Soviet tests. On March 11, 1968, these sensors recorded a series of catastrophic sounds, but not from a test. They were the sounds of a submarine breaking apart and imploding as it plunged past its crush depth. While Soviet ships searched hundreds of miles away based on faulty assumptions, the U.S. Navy used this precise acoustic data to pinpoint the wreck's location. There, resting on the seabed, 16,400 feet down, was one of the greatest intelligence prizes of the Cold War. The K-129 wreckage contained the keys to the Soviet nuclear arsenal, its missiles, its cryptographic codes, and its acoustic signatures. Access to the wreck would give American intelligence a direct look at their adversary's most sensitive military technology.
This was an era of intense global confrontation. The idea of a widespread communist spy network operating within the United States was a subject of fierce debate. Some dismissed it as paranoia, yet declassified intelligence, including the Venona decryptions, has since shown the threat was real. Soviet intelligence had developed upward of 500 cooperating contacts inside the U.S. government and defense industries. This included an assistant secretary of the Treasury, an influential White House aide, and dozens of other personnel. The Cold War was a war fought by spies in the shadows. In this climate, the K-129 wreck was an opportunity of historic proportions. The challenge was its location. No object of that size had ever been recovered from such a depth. Other government departments expressed serious doubts about the project's feasibility and cost. The CIA pushed forward anyway. The potential reward was judged to be worth any risk. The mission, codenamed Project Azorian, was approved. Its objective was as simple as it was audacious: raise the submarine. The CIA now faced a critical problem: how to conduct the world's deepest salvage operation in the middle of the Pacific without the Soviets noticing. Instead of hiding, their solution was to create a spectacle so public and so strange that no one would ever suspect the truth. They would construct an elaborate cover story centered on an emerging industry: deep ocean mining. To make the story believable, the agency needed a public partner whose reputation for grand, eccentric, and secretive projects was unparalleled. They found him in Howard Hughes, the reclusive billionaire industrialist. Hughes's company, Global Marine Development, would announce to the world a revolutionary new venture. They were building a massive ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, to mine precious manganese nodules from the seabed. The project's immense cost and pioneering technology would be explained as the latest gamble of a visionary tycoon. It was the perfect front. Behind this public fiction, the CIA and its contractors began the secret work of building the actual tools for the heist. The system was a marvel of bespoke engineering, consisting of 3 main components designed to work in perfect concert. First was the lift ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer. At over 600 feet long and displacing more than 50,000 tons, it was one of the most advanced vessels of its time.
It was equipped with a dynamic positioning system, using powerful thrusters linked to sonar beacons on the ocean floor to hold its position with absolute precision, even in rough seas. The ship's most important feature was its moon pool, a giant concealed chamber in the center of the hull, 200 feet long and 75 feet wide. This chamber, hidden beneath the main derrick, would allow the crew to conduct the entire recovery operation underwater, shielded from the view of spy satellites. Second was the Hughes mining barge, a massive submersible platform. The barge was designed to transport the capture vehicle to the recovery site undetected. It would be towed out to sea like a normal barge, but once on station, it could flood its ballast tanks and sink beneath the waves. The Glomar Explorer would then move into position over the submerged barge, allowing the crew to connect the capture vehicle to the ship's derrick in complete secrecy. The third and most critical component was the capture vehicle itself. Known to its designers as Clementine, it was a colossal mechanical claw. It was a structure of immense complexity, with powerful hydraulic pincers, docking legs, and a forest of lights and cameras. The entire 6-year project and its $500 million budget would depend on a few steel tines on this machine holding fast under pressures that had never been tested. If they broke, the entire mission would fail. For 6 years, thousands of engineers, technicians, and intelligence operatives worked in secret. The project cost nearly $500 million, an expenditure comparable to the Apollo moon landing. The cover story held, but as the Glomar Explorer prepared for its mission, international media attention grew. The operation was a monumental gamble, and the time had come to see if it would pay off.
On July 4th, 1974, the Hughes Glomar Explorer arrived at the recovery site, a remote patch of the Pacific a few nautical miles from the international dateline. To any passing ships or overhead satellites, it appeared to be making final preparations for its mining tests. But deep inside the ship, the real mission began. The massive doors of the moon pool opened to the sea, and the capture vehicle started its slow, 3-mile journey into the abyss. The process was painstaking. For more than a day, the crew assembled the pipe string, a colossal steel structure that would connect the ship to the claw. They added one 60-foot section of heavy pipe at a time, meticulously connecting and testing each one before lowering it into the ocean. In the ship's control room, a team of specialists monitored a bank of screens, the only window into the dark, crushing world below. They were guiding a machine the size of a building through an environment more hostile and less understood than the surface of the moon. Finally, after a descent that took days, a ghostly shape formed on the video monitors. It was the wreck of the K-129, a broken tomb resting on the seabed. For the first time, American eyes saw the prize they had pursued for 6 years. The control room was silent as the crew expertly maneuvered the capture vehicle into position. It was a feat of remote navigation that pushed the boundaries of technology. With unimaginable precision, the vehicle was lowered over the forward section of the wreck. The command was given. The great steel jaws of the claw began to close. On the monitors, the crew watched as the tines bit into the submarine's hull. A cloud of sediment erupted, obscuring the view, but the sensors confirmed a solid grip. Against all odds, the machine had worked. They had the submarine. The powerful winches of the Glomar Explorer took the strain, their motors humming under the immense weight. The pipe string pulled taut. The long, slow process of raising the dead from the ocean floor began. For days, the crew worked around the clock, monitoring the ascent. Foot by foot, the capture vehicle and its cargo were drawn up from the deep. The tension was immense. Any failure in the pipe string, any malfunction in the claw, would mean total failure. They were in the final stage of the lift, just a few thousand feet from the relative safety of the moon pool. Success was moments away. Then, disaster struck. The steel tines on the capture vehicle fractured.
On the screens, the crew watched as a main section of the submarine tore away from the claw's grip. It tumbled back into the darkness, lost forever. In an instant, the primary objective of Project Azorian, the section containing the code room and missile silo, was gone. The mission was a partial failure, a devastating blow after years of effort. The most valuable intelligence had slipped away. But the capture vehicle was not empty. A smaller, 38-foot-long forward section of the submarine remained clutched in the broken claw. Once it was secured inside the moon pool and the doors were sealed, the crew made another discovery. Inside the mangled wreckage were the remains of 6 Soviet sailors. The CIA's next action was not part of any standard operational procedure. In an act of profound respect for a fallen adversary, the agency's leaders decided to conduct a formal burial at sea. The remains were carefully collected and placed in a weighted steel casket. An honor guard of CIA officers and Glomar crewmen assembled on the ship's deck. With both the American and Soviet naval flags flying, a ship's officer read prayers for the dead, first in English and then in Russian. The ceremony was conducted with full military honors. Finally, the casket, draped in the Soviet flag, was committed to the deep. The entire ceremony was filmed. It was a secret record, a testament to a moment of shared humanity in the heart of the Cold War. The film was classified and stored in a secure vault for nearly 2 decades. In October 1992, with the Cold War over, CIA Director Robert Gates presented the film to Russian President Boris Yeltsin, finally providing the families of the lost sailors with the knowledge of their honorable end. With the operational phase of Project Azorian complete, one central question remained. What had caused the K-129 to sink? For years, the absence of facts allowed competing theories to flourish.
The most politically convenient theory for the Soviets was that the K-129 had collided with an American submarine, the USS Swordfish, which was known to operate in the region. This narrative cast the United States as the responsible party. However, exhaustive research of declassified U.S. Navy logs proves the Swordfish was in port in Yokosuka, Japan, for repairs at the time of the sinking, thousands of miles away. The collision theory was a fabrication. A more sensational story put forward by some American authors was that the K-129 was a rogue submarine. This theory proposed that a group of hardline officers had seized control of the vessel and were attempting to launch a nuclear missile at Hawaii to trigger a war. While a compelling plot for a thriller, researchers Norman Polmar and Michael White found the explanation highly unlikely and unsupported by any credible evidence. The most probable cause is found in the acoustic data that first led the U.S. to the wreck. The hydrophones recorded 2 distinct catastrophic events. Analysts now believe the first sound was the accidental ignition of a missile's liquid fuel engine while it was still secured in its launch tube. This would have caused an instantaneous massive explosion and fire, breaching the hull. The submarine would have lost depth control and plunged towards the ocean floor. The second sound, recorded minutes later, was the final violent implosion of the hull as the submarine passed its crushed depth. The K-129 was not sunk by an enemy or a conspiracy. It was destroyed by a fatal malfunction of its own deadly weapons. Project Azorian stands as a landmark of intelligence and engineering. It was an operation of stunning audacity and technical creativity. Though it failed to recover its primary objective, the intelligence gathered from the recovered section, which included 2 nuclear torpedoes, was still immensely valuable. The project's legacy is also felt in law, where the CIA's refusal to confirm or deny the operation's existence gave rise to the Glomar response. More than anything, the story of the Hughes Glomar Explorer and the K-129 is a reflection of the Cold War itself, a silent, high-stakes conflict fought with incredible machines in the dark, where the fate of the world could turn on a secret buried 3 miles beneath the waves.